Hello everyone, dear students, welcome back to another guest lecture. Today we have Henrike Schmitz talking about sustainable textile processing. She's currently working as a process engineer at the company SOEX. SOEX is a world player in sorting of textile post-consumer waste by certain qualities and categories, for example, jeans and t-shirts, etc. The good qualities are sold to resale, like secondhand stores. And for textiles which are not suited for the reuse, the company has their own recycling shredding machines. They are currently working on an automated sorting process by NIR scanning methods. Before, she worked for Technical University Chemnitz as a researcher and editor of the platform Textile Trainer. Saxony, the region where we are based in Eastern Germany right now, struggles with a shortage of skilled workers, especially in the textile sector. The platform provides knowledge connected to the textile process chain to empower people for an optional career change. Henrike is also trained as a men's tailor and textile designer, which influences her actual research a lot, as she currently is a PhD as well, to implement recycled fibers in the knitting process and reflect on products which are designed to recycle, so combining the different steps of her education. Henrike, thanks for your time to join today.
Hi, everyone. So before we dive in the topic, I just wanted to show you quickly the Textile Trainer because it's a nice tool. I mean, it's made for the shortage of workers in Saxony, but now the project is developing and there are courses in English as well. And the focus in the courses are also on sustainability. So it's really important topic to, in every course, to mention sustainability, to show up like a certain way which you can go with the topic. So for example, one course which is already translated in English is wool spinning, so also nice for our meetup today. It's like about the whole process of wool spinning, and it's really quite interactive. So you have these kind of overviews, but also you can click on cards and then something is opening up. So it's also about a little bit of gaming and like having fun by doing the course. So if you Google textile trainer, you will hopefully find these resources. We can also maybe pin it afterwards in the comments. Yeah. So just to quickly to show you what this is. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing and bringing the first example with you. And yes, you can sign up for this for free, and we will share the link after the course. So let's start with the first question of our topic. Could you please tell us a bit how you define sustainability? It's quite a comprehensive, complex topic, and everyone describes it a bit differently compared to their background.
Yes, I mean, sustainability is really a big word and like not easy to grab. And it's also a buzzword. So it's all about the media and the effect. So for me, it's always good to find like a link which is also a little bit personal. So as we work with textiles are very, very close to us. And we literally feel when something breaks or when like a seam opens up or like when something get dirty or any kind of that. So then if it's like an emotional textile, like a sweater or something you got from your grandma, then of course you care about it. So you want to repair it and you want to think about it like not to throw it away directly. So that is something like an agency, or like the objects have like their own kind of value in your world, and also they bring you to do stuff, so they make you repair it because you love them. And that's kind of a connection which in like brings you to sustainability and to sustainable behaviors. So it's not easy to translate this kind of connection to bigger processes, but it's nice to have it in mind and to go with this agenda to your work also, to see these objects as valuable and important for your life. But there's also another way I go, or I have a link to sustainability, is also efficiency. So it's a word which is not really positive always, but it also has from its background not just economic. And not only the economic view, it's also about like how can processes be done in time and also with the resources we have. It's also like our resources seem to be unlimited, and it's not anymore like back in the days when they said the cotton plant is like as big as it is, and it can give a certain amount of cotton. Now it seems to be unlimitless, and this is kind of a struggle to deal with the topic sustainability. And now we have to step back from we have all the resources to we have to control the resources in a way. And also about coming back to efficiency. There's also a point where it doesn't make sense anymore to repair, like the piece is maybe just broken or you can't wear it anymore because of different reasons. And then it's like this economic effect that there has to be a new machine, there has to be a new process, and it can't be just emotional. There always has to be this equality of these two parameters. And it's also like what the example shows, a really shifting word. So you can't say there is a certain state you can enter or then something is sustainable. It's all in change and it's really abstract. So yeah, you have to make your point you have to approve these processes every day nearly, and have a look on it, or is it still sustainable or not. And it's also to keep like an overview about processes, like to step back and to see what the resources are and how we deal with it and what is really needed. And yeah, it really needs a clear view, even though it has this emotional connection. And what I found really, really interesting is like about these resources, which seems to be all over the place. I once gave a workshop to students to identify, as a design strategy, as I have this design background, identify a certain problem in their daily life and then to develop a concept to find tools and solution for this problem. And a lot of them couldn't find a problem. So what does it mean? Like, are there no problems in the world? Are there no problems in the daily life? So it's also like a mirroring and an effect of like, maybe we don't see all the parameters which are important for sustainability. It also is interesting if we think about the textile, especially the textile sustainability and the problem of waste. So of textile waste, as I work at the moment a lot with, that people tend to outsource questions which are not comfortable or like, which may be problematic. And this is really easy in the textile industry because it is all over the place. So as a little reminder of like what is going on in the world, this is a really interesting documentary about the trash which is going to Kenya, for example.
As fashion production has skyrocketed in high-income countries, they have increasingly relied on exporting used clothing to relieve pressure on their overburdened systems. In fact, over 900 million items of used clothing were exported to Kenya in 2021. This equals more than 17 items of clothing for every Kenyan each year. Of this, up to 450 million items are estimated to be waste clothing. Kenya is a key destination for used clothing referred to locally as mitumba. And while much of this clothing is sorted and resold, a large proportion is waste made from plastic-based materials and is contributing to a mounting environmental crisis in the country. Upon arrival in Mombasa Freight Port by container ship from exporters across the world, including JMP Wilcox, Savor Textiles, Cookstown, and Baltic Textile Trading, the clothing bales are transferred to warehouses known as godowns situated adjacent to the larger mitumba markets. These bales, containing around 200 items, each of a known condition or quality, are sold on by brokers to market traders for around 6,000 to 10,000 Kenyan shillings or 50 to 80 euros. Only at the mitumba markets are the bales finally opened. Here, traders will find out if their gamble has paid off and if they can turn a profit on these used clothes. Traders we interviewed estimated that between 20 and 50% of a bale will be unsellable, either damaged, stained, too big, or culturally inappropriate.
You can open a bale and you find they are almost all of them taitais at 10. We sell at 10 shillings.
Some have been found covered in vomit, animal hair and stains, or include old uniforms from Tesco and McDonald's with name badges still attached. This indicates that sorting of clothing in the export countries is failing to remove waste before export and is instead shipped abroad where it becomes someone else's problem.
Lakini shida ya nguo sasa hivi, nguo zinakuja zikiwa chafu, sio nzuri sana. Kwa mfano hii ya UK iko na stain, haifai kabisa, mtu anunui. Pia hii hapa ni kampuni ya Morocco. Si nzuri, si chafu sana, si nzuri sana, but ina waste kwa bale. Haya, ina masteni, ina mashimo. Unaiona imetoboka? Unaiona? Imetoboka, ina mashimo na ina stain. Hii ni waste.
Even for clothes that are not damaged, there is a concerning trend of declining quality. And much of the poor quality clothing was found to be synthetic.
The quality of mitumba is just getting worse. Yes, day after day.
Kuna zile tunapata faida, lakini mingi tunapata hasara juu zile nguo mingi ndio inakuwa baya kushida zile mzuri. Sasa unaona hata ukiuza zile mzuri, unauza kidogo, zile baya haiwezi letoa kitu. Unaona?
Among the bales are recognizable European and international brands, including New Look, Old Navy, Nike, H&M, Gap, and 9 West, many of which make green claims about their clothing. Mitumba that isn't bought or is damaged is sold to traders of fagia, the lowest grade of used clothes. Fagia traders can expect to make as little as 70 shillings or 50 euro cents per kilo of fagia.
Ni hasara kwetu kwanza kabisa. Unauza indambagi hizi ndio maana unaona tunachoma hizi tunatupa. Asante.
While fagia sellers will try to sell items as cut-price clothing, our investigation found that most are destined for rags, burnt as fuel, or simply dumped.
Kama hii inaitwa polyester. Sasa hiyo zibaleka na mtu. Huwezi baleka hata kidogo. Kama hizi ndio zinatusumbua sisi. Kama hii aziero. Hii tena hii material yake wameleta mbaya. Hii ukivuruta hivi inatararuka.
Kama hizi za nylon tunaziuza kwa bei ya chini kabisa, na kama haziendi tunauzia watu wa kuchoma njugu watumie kama kuni.
Near to the fagia market, scraps of clothing and even whole items, much of which were made from plastic fibers, were being burnt in an open fire over which people were cooking peanuts, some of whom complained of issues with toxic smoke inhalation. Here, the team found brands such as George at Asda and M&S, with one item encouraging the owner to recycle with Oxfam. After any final use is found for the clothing, there's nowhere else for it to go but being dumped or discarded. Areas around the markets are saturated with textile waste. At Gikomba Market, the banks of the Nairobi River are deeply embedded with old clothing and plastic bale ties.
The waste is getting worse because there's a lot of clothes coming in now, and so that means the wastage is plenty now than it was before. So there's lots of waste. To be honest, it's getting worse.
The sheer volume of waste clothes means they regularly end up in the river, where they will eventually flow into the sea and break down into microfibers, another invisible form of plastic pollution. Our investigators traveled to several dump sites, including Kawangware dump site and Dandora dump site, East Africa's largest landfill. Despite being declared full in 2001, over 4,000 tons of waste is dumped in Dandora every day, a significant proportion of which is waste clothing running in deep layers through the sides of giant hills of waste that line the truck access road and around the Nairobi River, which borders the site. The team found brands including Nike, M&S, and even high-end brands like Yves Saint Laurent among the waste. Much of it is made from plastic fibers like polyester, and so will never biodegrade and has no value to the waste pickers working at the site. Many of these people reported breathing difficulties such as asthma, worsened by the ever-burning fires on top of the dump site. Some dump sites are situated alarmingly close to schools, posing a threat to the health and well-being of the children and other local residents. What was clear from our investigation is that the problem is only getting worse.
What I'm concerned about is about this river. It has become too dirty. It has become like a dumping site. And I don't think this is the way that we should live. There are so many dirty clothes that are not of a good standard. As an African or as a Kenyan, I'm concerned about this environment.
With this investigation, we reached the end of the runway for fossil fashion. When we throw away clothing, this is what away actually means. Burnt to ashes, swept into waterways and deep oceans, compacted into man-made mountains of toxic plastic waste. As production of clothing has grown, an increasing proportion of fashion is being made from cheap synthetic or plastic fibers. Synthetics, such as polyester, make up 69% of all fiber for textiles and have become the backbone of the fast fashion industry. While exporting plastic waste is now restricted under the Basel Convention, it is estimated that up to 300 million items of waste synthetic clothing are still entering Kenya annually by stealth. That means that 1 in 3 pieces of used clothing shipped to Kenya contains plastic that will continue polluting the environment for centuries. These plastic fibers, made from fossil fuels such as oil and gas, do not biodegrade, instead fragmenting over time into microfibers, further adding to the plastic pollution crisis. The constant flood of cheap synthetic clothing produced by brands in the global north has created an overwhelming volume of waste clothing exported to communities which are now struggling to cope with the devastating consequences of this toxic influx on their daily lives. The situation in Kenya is replicated in countries all over the world. It is time for brands to take responsibility for their fashion waste.
Sasa sianze kusema zile zinatakana. Sasa zile nguo zinatakana ni nguo kama hizi. Hizi ni smart. Nguo nzuri kwa packing. Hizi ni nguo nzuri. Hizi sio waste, hizi zinaenda. Ni nguo safi.
Wangetengeneza nguo mzuri, yaani waste ingekuwa mingi. Kwa hivyo, ingine inatusumbua, tutengeneze nguo hizi hatuwezi tupa.
Real change will not come from more voluntary initiatives by the fashion industry. We need new legislation to ensure sustainable production of textiles, including eco-design, collection, sorting, recycling, and waste management of products they place on the market. Companies that are making billions from selling cheap fast fashion should be held responsible for the end of life of their clothes.
Thanks for this very comprehensive overview, and yeah, we can see how complex the topic is. So let's start now with the actual topic of this guest lecture today. Today we talk about modern ways of sustainable textile processing in particular. So how do you define actually modern, the part?
Yeah. Modern is like a really interesting term. So this belongs originally to a certain time, which was really important for the development of the whole textile industry, the Industrial Revolution. It marks a break from traditions to new times and dynamics with a lot of change. So nowadays we are already talking about postmodern dynamics. That's also something which is linked to art, design, and fashion. Like you find the word modern also really like prominent in art and culture. And as the Industrial Revolution brought scale ups in terms of conditions for mass production, so before we had like the small scale textile industry, and after that it was focused on mass production, the times now are more defined by individuality and the demand for small scale production. So everyone wants a certain style or like a special, really special, unique textile or not the big masses. The industrial setup has to follow these needs, and the change is slow. I mean, so we have still a lot of big facilities ready to produce masses, and we have the demand for fast changing individual styles on the other hand. So this is complicated. But modern can also be a wording tool for us to accept change. Not everyone is keen to change, develop processes for an open end. So we don't know if they work out or not. So maybe it's good to keep us in the modern way and say we are open for modern processes.
So when we look on the actual process chain and its impacts on each steps, where would you start explaining it and what does it include?
As the textile industry is completely globalized, the different steps to produce a textile product are located all over the world. So transporting goods is way cheaper than keep them in a stored place. Originally, back in the days, sourcing, processing, and production was set in an area which it was limited by a lot of factors, like the agricultural setup, for example. So to be efficient, the producers had to be sustainable, like from the whole process, to have a view on it. Not by choice, then to get the best of the products concerning the limits. But the limits changed. Back in the day, some farmers had to work with one facility. Nowadays, production places can move all over the world because of the low transportation prices. Bangladesh has a very big textile industry with a lot of production steps all over the country. But to start with the fiber sourcing process, as we still work with natural fibers, the sourcing will be another place. And as Europe, especially Germany, still has a leading role in importing textiles from Bangladesh, the textile processing is all over the place. Still, also design processes and decisions are not made in the place of production, but often the place of production has another knowledge about resources and efficiency than the place where just innovation and development takes place. So it's a really key question how the communication can be organized, how innovation from scratch, modern ideas and sustainable strategies and ideas from the production itself can be linked and get an exchange. So modern is here now read as a marker for change. The mass production with a lot of fashion goods made for short times and certain understanding of fashion product is a lot of items which are not bought and needed. What to do with these items? We call it post-consumer waste. We have already seen the streams of post-consumer waste in the video at the beginning. So since 1 year, retailers in Germany are not anymore allowed to destroy, retour or damage goods. So what to do? Learning from the actual problems for sure, but what to do with the existing clothes and the textile waste? So we have these two paths we have to go. SOEX, like the company I'm working for now, as a sorter can bring a lot of textiles back in the second-hand market. But of course, as we also saw in the video, we can't use all of them. Like all the damaged goods are not getting back in the circuit. So they have to be recycled, and recycling is getting more and more important. So if we get back to the definition of sustainability as an efficient process, as a reaction to price and resources, we definitely have to work with a resource which is getting more and more and less good quality also. That's the post-consumer waste. So so I see there's a focus on collecting and sorting and have an overview about this resource, this new resource kind of. And SOEX, for example, is developing this NIR scanning based process to identify the material composition and to provide, for example, something like chemical recycling.
Let's dive in the different steps a bit more deeper and also answer the questions received from the students. So what makes textile processing sustainable?
So for the beginning, we have kind of a video as an an example of how sustainability is or how we want it or how simple we think it.
Here I am, worrying about the future. Again, dear aliens, send help. No, but seriously, does anything we do make any difference? Oh, I guess it's not all bad. Like, I read that the technology behind coding is based on century-old inventions for weaving fabrics. Meaning, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't have that loop machine. And now we can use this new technology, based on really old technology, to recycle and make new fabrics from old fabrics. One thing evolves into another, like a loop. What if we could loop ourselves? Level up and take steps in the right direction? We won't be completely new people. We'll just have evolved. And maybe that's what we all need to do. evolve. Do something today that makes a difference tomorrow.
And then now I have prepared a mind map, which maybe shows on the first view already how complex the situation really is. So you see it, right?
Oh, wow, yes.
So yeah, I have it's also, I think it's always in progress because it's difficult to find a really good graphic view on something which is definitely complex. So that is something I think really important to show, that the system itself is complex. But yeah, there is something in the center, like the modern textile processing we're talking about. And there's something swimming around, like here, the transportation, the working conditions, and the price, which influence like nearly all the steps and all the decisions at the steps. And if we go from the start, it's like, it could be design. So design stands nearly at the beginning, but of course it influences like a lot of different steps ongoing. So before we start with the fiber sourcing, the first step, we have, of course, design decisions. So here you can see it's also about strategies, like design is to investigate and analyze and to try and error, which are methodology. I think it's really important for the whole process to investigate some techniques and so on. So, and you see design is also related to some factors like contemporary season, style and color. And then you can follow all these lines, like fiber sourcing as the first step, of course, is available, like is related or like depending on availability of like material, but also if we work with recycled fibers, then it's depending on color. And then also we want predictable performance of the fibers. We want like a certain performance, and we want to be sure that the performance will be there. And then in the spinning process, you have another steps which influence the process, like there's a combination of different types of fibers. It's like the fiber length and also like how strong it's twisted. And then, of course, it's going on and on. Like if you go to the textile surface and you decide for which technique you go, there are also some pros and cons. Like the weaving process has like offcut from the beginning, but the knitting is adaptable to the amount of yarn you have. So as you ask also students for like the most sustainable technique, it's always see and deciding and a lot of steps where you can influence this question. And for dyeing, for example, it's like the choice of color, it's the type of color or the effect to the fiber. So there are a lot of parameters you see. And for me, this area, like from my background, this area is really interesting and influenced the whole process again. So if we say like, what is a sustainable process, textile process, we have to ask the question at the beginning. As you see, the process is really complex, like why to start it anyway? So if we talked about the post-consumer waste we have, or like the textiles we have on the planet, so why to start a production? So this is something we have to confront and maybe find parameters and like a good argumentation for why to start the process. And that the second thing is when we have this processes to work with methodology from design, like to check all the time, is there a new technique? Is there innovation we could use? Is there an adaptation of a process which could be even better? And yet to update these questions, to see sustainability not as a static word, then something which is to be checked on along the way. As I already said, like sustainability is a flexible term, and it's also depending on like the certain setup we have, and also to see if it's efficient and we can make profit with it. But also sustainability is really, really deeply linked to political situations. So as the textile industry is globalized, the decisions has to be made for the planet, but that's complicated, as we know. So the legislation is more in the countries and then in Europe in like certain areas. And then when the political situation changed, then of course there are new regulations and new targets. So it's deeply complicated to follow like a long-term strategy. And the current topics, of course, as we all know, is the climate change and like the CO2 emissions, and also the effect of microplastics. And that's really interesting because at the beginning, like when the synthetics were developed, it was like this really cool invention of, okay, we have more and more people on the planet and we can't do it all with the natural fibers, so we need something else. And then the synthetics were born and developed, and everyone was really excited about it. But now we see, okay, so these synthetics, they also have like an impact on the planet, and they are not biodegradable. And yeah, we have to deal with that. So that's also interesting and important to reflect on these dynamics, that it takes certain time of like 50 years to see the full process of there is a development, and then it has to be adapted, and then there has to be a new way to deal with it. So yeah, so that is, I think, like a really nice example to see.
Thank you for that. And maybe we can stay with the topic and look at the sustainable fiber selection, as you just mentioned, the microplastics or the synthetic fibers. What does it include?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first step. So fiber sourcing gets important if a product will be developed from the beginning. That means the design and production plan is not working with the already existing fabric. So there's also a scenario which is possible. So the design decision is the fiber sourcing is important in terms of product design. So which fiber has the best performance for especially the setting? On this level is a lot of decision can be made. So it's important, but also the level is in relation to existing conditions. So for example, we are sourcing for a jacket. Question which are coming up is like, should the jacket be warm or cold? Should it be like a light, or should it be rain resistant, soft? Should like all these kind of needs. So the fiber recipe is reacting to these needs. And then you always have to keep in mind that the mixture influences the recycling process. So now recycling gets more and more important. But when the time was of combining fibers, it was just nice to have the chance to combine it. But now this kind of combination mixture recipe is complicated. So this is also a nice example for this kind of how things go in the innovation process. So the combination of different fiber types was once like this big innovation, as I said, and now it's the struggle. So synthetics were developed, as I said, to react to the bigger need. And now it's the problem. As I said, that synthetics are in critique about the microplastic and also the biodegradable. They are seeking for alternatives. So, for example, man-made cellulosic-based fibers are at a big topic right now. So if we are still sourcing, so if we say we want a new fiber, then this type of fiber is a big player right now. And also an interesting example for this innovation process. So like 70 years ago, there was this viscose, like the rayon process, which is based on like cellulose from mainly trees and also wood from trees. But now the development went further. So for example, modal was the second type of fiber, which was already a little bit more sustainable. And now we have lyocell, which is the most sustainable fiber of the three. And it is because you can reuse the chemicals and the water which is in the process. So that's like a really nice argument for this fiber. But on the other hand, you have like big masses you need to produce. So it was a long time that just there was just one company producing these fiber. But now it's developing and developing. So and also the amount of cellulose changing. So nowadays it can be 80%, which is really nice, and the rest can be sorted out. So it's really a technique and a sourcing method you can apply to recycled cotton. So because in recycled cotton you often have like other materials like rests and pieces. But then you can apply this strategy. And for example, Infinited Fibers, they work with that. It's a new company, and you will see in the video their strategy of dissolving the cellulose. Yeah.
Very interesting. And yeah, you brought a video with you as an example. So let's have a look now.
Infinited Fiber, born from the VTT Research Center, is trying to achieve a goal where your clothes can be recycled infinitely. The feedstock that we're using at the moment is post-consumer textile waste coming from the textile collection campaigns that are being done here in Finland.
We transform the cellulose separated from the cotton-rich textile waste. Our technology is organic solvent-free and uses water-based processes. In traditional viscose manufacturing, carbon disulfide is used, and it's considered as toxic nerve poison. We have replaced carbon disulfide with urea, which is a natural biomolecule.
At this stage, the shredded textiles still have all the elastane, polyester, colors, and anything else there that might be existing in the old textile. Material is being processed to remove the polyfibers from the stream. Washing sequences remove any remaining impurities, as well as traces of the alkaline liquor. At this stage, we have mainly cellulosic parts of the material left. This pilot factory is our gem, and it's here that we have the core of our process. This is where the magic lives. At Infinited Fiber Company, our process is quite robust. For example, we can handle the elastane impurities.
Carbamide fiber is unique because its benefits are like it takes up the color very easily, which means that its footprint there is very low. The other thing is that it's also user-friendly, which is another surplus. And of course, it's a vital part of the future of textile industry because we have to go for recyclings.
In the wet spinning process, we regenerate fibers from the cellulose liquid. This part of the process is well known from the viscose industry, and that's why our technology can be easily retrofitted to existing viscose mills. In this liquid, your old jeans and t-shirts have forgotten their history, and they're ready to be reborn. So let's do some magic. As the cellulose liquid touches the acid, neutralization happens, and the cellulose crystallizes into new fibers. So from every tiny hole comes a new fiber.
We produce a yarn with 50% of organic cotton, and after we produce 100% with Infinited Fiber. So analyzing the properties of the yarn, yarns are between cotton and viscose.
Everything that you've seen today has been filmed during our first 72-hour production run. demonstrating that the process can be run continuously for a few days. Now, our next step is the scale-up.
Thank you so much for these insights. Let's move to the sustainable spinning process. How do you define it, and what part of usual process makes it unsustainable? How can sustainable processing be done?
So it's really similar, I would say, like the question we can apply to all the steps, and we ask similar questions, like often, is the process we use really still modern, or should we change it a little? And for example, at spinning processes, you need like a really high amount of fibers to produce yarn, because the machines were made for masses. So it can't react spontaneously, and it often makes a lot of waste in the process. So it's the question, is there a possibility to change the machine a little bit? Can we apply the process of like have less yarn, or could we produce a yarn which can be applied to different types of surfaces or something like that? So and if you think about the process itself, there is a combination of fibers which is possible in the spinning process. What is nice to make a recipe with different performances, but also always have in mind that there should be a recycling method for it, or like at least an opportunity. And the machines are limited for the fiber length still. So you have like this cotton spinning machines and the wool spinning machines. So maybe there's something possible in the future. And also that the development of a recycling yarn is still complicated, or like the fibers are quite short, so it's not easy to apply them in the weaving process. But then maybe think about, can these yarns like be used in a different type of fabric production? So you see, it's like parameters in one area, but still it's reflecting on each other. So if you maybe work a little on this field, you could change the other process. And as I said at the beginning, like the innovation in the production is really important. So the people who are working in these areas, they see these materials every day and they understand their performance. So if there is a communication and like a collaboration, then I think innovation can also come from the process itself. Yeah.
That's very good. Collaboration is always the key, I would say. Yeah. So what do you think about sustainable weaving and knitting processes?
Yeah, as I said, from the mind map, it is like the two techniques are based on concepts which are already kind of sustainable or not sustainable. So weaving has to be cut, like you have the surface which is pre-planned, and then you cut out the patterns. So you have this offcut and you have to work with the offcut. Of course, you can adapt the patterns a little bit, that it's less offcut, but it is there. So maybe to find concepts to work or like collaborate with companies which work with offcut, that's a strategy. Or to find to shift between the techniques, to maybe combine knitting and weaving for the certain design, the certain product plan, and like to get out the best performance, but still design it in the most efficient way. And what is also an interesting new idea is Corizon. I work with that in my PhD. It's like a new technique which was developed by Terod, like a company which produces around knitting machines. And it's the idea to combine production steps like spinning and knitting to have a thread which is not a proper thread. It's more like a pre-thread, So you could save steps in between, but also it gives new types of textiles. So it's more soft, it's more open, and also maybe it's easier to recycle. That's the idea. But of course, it's also an innovation which is pretty young and which has a lot of struggles and problems. But yeah, we are working on it. So you can see there are ideas going on, and I hope it's getting more and more.
So I think you're then the person who has to answer all the open questions in this more innovative process. Sounds very interesting. Let's move on to sustainable dyeing processing. What do you think about this?
Yes, I mean, that's also a really interesting topic to show how regulations can define the process. So, for example, dyeing in Germany is more complicated than in other countries, I would say, because our regulations are really strict about like how people use the chemicals, how the working situation is, and also which chemicals. So there are a lot of regulations, and I think this is super important to save people, to save the process, to have a good product. But of course, not all over the world the regulations are the same. So it's going to be like they're going to be dyeing processes in other countries. So for the first thing, I would say it needs regulation to have everyone, to have safe working conditions. But on the other hand, to see this duality of like regulations and process adapting, but also innovation. Of course, you can have a view on new processes. For example, there's this really fresh project of ozone dyeing that's like working with already existing chemical reactions like sun and some special dye stuff. So there you can see it's always the combination of both. So yeah.
I also heard about that. Very interesting. And next one is sustainable garments manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, there we are already at the finished product, kind of. So then the question of, is the product really the right one I want? Is the design the one the people want? So that's a really tough question, and how people decide on the product. So for example, there's a lot of sending and getting back at the moment, like retour, we say, like you can order and then you can send it back for no costs. So this is a really complicated factor at the moment. But how can we adapt it? Like, do we try on garments digitally, or how we decide for garments if we don't go in shops anymore? So that's a key question at the moment. And then, which is also complicated in the design process, do you want clothes which are made for forever, like which last really, really long, which is also an important factor on sustainability? But on the other hand, if we say, we talked about recycling, so often the textiles which are made for long term, they are complicated made, so they can't be recycled. They consist of a lot of different materials, really complex seams and so on. So there is like a really difficult key question. So maybe we should focus on there is fashion, there are fashion dynamics, and people want to change clothing. So there should be some clothing which is made for short term. It's still open how that looks. But and there are also some clothing for long term, and they last really, really long, and they have like offers to get repaired, or like places and connections where you can give them to get them repaired, because that I see also in my daily life is complicated for people to find resources to get their stuff repaired. So yeah, that is also important.
And there's still a bit to do. And when we talk about the general topic again on sustainable processing, do you think there's anything missing you haven't shared yet?
Well, maybe to share something from the daily life. So if we talk about post-consumer waste, it's not a bad word. It sounds good, but actually what is coming in is really complex. So you have so many different textile types and multi-layers and combinations. So it really takes time to find the perfect process which adapts to this kind of resource. So recycling still needs a certain input, and I hope that that we're getting further with that to deal with this post-consumer waste more and more, because it's still like 1% which is fiber to fiber, like to say like the post-consumer waste we get back and then put back in fiber sourcing and then in textiles again. So it should be more. And I see, of course, with my background and the methodology, like that the collaboration, as we already said, like between manufacturers, but also like the planning and the production planning, but also the design strategies and the art strategies, and to have like a collaborative path together and to see it more as this project and not like singular in these different areas.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's so complex because you have so many different textiles to recycle. So there is the sorting with this innovative method your company is doing, and then we recycle the clothing if it's possible. So what types of recycling strategies are already in use?
Yeah, so the one and really famous one is the 100% polyester. It's at the moment it's already 95, so the amount is also adapting for the process, which is nice. So because if we have polyester clothing, then it can be less. Then mixed fibers up to 60% cotton. So all this is used to chemical recycling also as polyester, because there can be cellulose extracted, or like viscose, like rayon can be made of it, and regenerated fibers. And also there is this big jeans area, which is used for chemical recycling because it's mainly cotton. And the big sector is still mechanical recycling, like jeans, wool and acrylic, but also mixed layers. But it's also interesting to talk about what happens with this mechanical recycling stuff. So it's often still downcycling. So it's used, it finds its application in a form which is after that like thrown away. So can be better still.
Yeah, and it can be better, I know, but do you see already any changes from like 5 years ago to now? And many recycling and reuse initiatives have started, I see, and become more popular, right?
Yes, definitely. That's really important to mention. Also, the focus, like it's talking, like it's spoken a lot about this topic. NGOs are also show up the problems. We are more aware, so that is really, really important to see the change. And there's also something about fashionable secondhand. So this was not always like that a lot of people buy secondhand, because about that there's also a topic about curation, like how we find the best outfits, and there's a bigger market in the internet, so that's cool. But we also had like a look on textiles related to fashion, but there are also textiles related to automotive or like technical textiles, and they already have a totally different market. So maybe we can also learn from these markets or like these kind of flows and adapt it to the fashion related textile industry.
Yeah, very interesting, and thanks for the comprehensive complex overview. Any last statement you would like to give our students on the way for their future career and perhaps research topics?
Yeah, I mean, of course, keep on talking about it. It's really important to share the information and also the knowledge, and to work with the already made experience. Like the textile industry is really old, like there is a lot of knowledge for years and years. So to be keen to discuss and build up networks, travel along as you can, like to see all the different facilities, collaborate, and share the textile skills. So it's important to have in mind that we have these two situations, like there are already a lot of textiles on the planet and in the market, and we are talking about production for future textiles. So to work with both, like to analyze what is happening now, what the output is there, like what could be an input for recycling, and then to adapt for the new textile processing. What should we focus? Where should we have the view on? And to develop new strategies.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your examples, your inputs, sharing your expertise. And yeah, thank you for joining this guest lecture.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.